All right, it's right at 6 o'clock. We'll get rolling. All right, so recording, we're going to call the meeting to order. Just a reminder that we are recording these minutes or these meetings, and also we've been asked to share a reminder to continue wearing face masks during this pandemic and practice social distancing whenever possible. Right now we have 3 minutes. Councilor Kwasinski, were you able to review the minutes that Omar?
I was unfortunately not able to review them.
Okay, then
I apologize.
I will not do any approval of minutes. We'll save them for the next meeting. Councilor Gomez, did you see the mayor join in by chance?
I don't see the mayor here.
Yeah, I don't see her either.
No, not the mayor, no.
All right, so we're going to move on to public speak time. So we're going to do it this way, a little differently. I'm going to invite everybody from the public to speak now. This will be your opportunity to speak on your opinion of any of the appointments tonight or anything else you may want to address with the appointments committee. You're going to have a 3-minute speak. Councilor Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I just want to remember everybody, before you speak, can you please say your name and address for the record? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gomez. So we're going to have 3 minutes to speak in order to allow others to have time to speak as well. If you're one of the 3 appointments, I'm going to offer you time to speak and answer questions during your review time. This will be the time where councilors are not going to be able to answer any questions or speak to any of the comments. We will only listen. So if you want to speak, please raise your hand in the sidebar. And you can do that going under participants and then raise hand. I'm going to, I have a request for Mr. Montgomery to go first, so I will pass it over to him.
Thank you very much. My name is Jason Montgomery. I live on Ferry Street in Easthampton. I would personally prefer to keep the house number to myself, given that I've had people driving by and harassing me since my attempt to join this Community Relations Committee. Tonight, I am here to encourage the City Council to approve the appointments of Gabby Stevenson and Myra. I have worked with both of these individuals as a part of A Kind. They are intelligent, empathetic, motivated, and good individuals in and of themselves. And just as importantly, they are strong women of color. This committee is in desperate need of a diverse group of voices. And since we've started engaging with this group, it has become some kind of strange lightning rod for people in this community to voice very odd opinions and to act in ways that allow the worst parts of our community to dictate what is supposed to be a community relations committee. I know that watching, no offense to you, Councilperson Zarrett, but watching you engage in conversations on the Easthampton Facebook arguments page with individuals who are calling for either of these women or myself to not be appointed to this group, and seeing the rationales behind it, I have to say, if you lean on those rationales as a group of City Council people, shame on you. Because that's all they are, is rationales around why you would not want diversity on this committee. And I will say it point blank. If you fall into this thing where it's like, well, the political beliefs of a person of color are too radical to be on this committee, shame on you. Because you cannot expect a person of color to divest themselves of 400 years of oppression and pain to be able to sit on a committee in Easthampton and happily take everything. It is part of our existence. It is part of our identity. It is part of who we are. And if you don't understand that, you don't really want us serving on your committees. You just want us there so you can feel better. You can't voice one of our population and then expect us to want to take part in a healing that this town desperately needs. So I will say it again. Confirm these two individuals, and you will not find any harder working, more dedicated individuals for this town. And with that, I cede the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. All right. I'm going to the next one. There's no particular order. It's just how it's lined up here. Kae Collins, if you would like, you can go.
Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate that. I'm here tonight both to speak in favor of the appointments of Gabriela Stevenson and Myra Oyedemi, and also to make just a couple of general points. I know both Myra and Gabby to be deeply kind and thoughtful people with a passion for justice and an enormous capacity for empathy, which is something that is sorely lacking in this world today. I'm sure we can all agree on that. I'm also here to tell you that, you know, what Jason says is correct. I mean, we do need a diversity of voices on this council. And in my experiences and my conversations with people in our community, you know, the fact is the experiences of people of color living and working and traveling in Easthampton are not the same as the experiences of our white community members. And those voices really genuinely need to be heard. You know, but as candidates, I feel like both Gabby and Myra are going to put the best interest of Easthampton first. Other thing that I'd like to urge you to do is to take care to employ the same lens on these candidates that you have to accepting prior members who both during and prior to their tenure have posted commentary online publicly that expressed their displeasure with Easthampton in less than polite ways. You know, we know that some other members have had strong language. I'm not going to call out specifically people about their Facebook posts in this particular case. You know, I think you all know that I had strong objection to Kathy Gray's appointment, and the reason for that was because I genuinely thought that it posed a danger to the relationships the Community Relations Commission was formed to encourage and grow in this community. I think that there's a vast difference between being critical of city government and city agencies or the actions of community members and publicly employing racist tropes and deliberately and repeatedly fomenting division. I mean, let those of us who have never dropped an F-bomb on the internet cast the first stone, right? We as a community don't need perfect candidates who have never expressed their displeasure with Easthampton. We do need candidates who express their displeasure, but are also willing to take action to change the things that displease them. And we need people that are capable of helping us to create the kind of community that we want here, and capable of putting empathy first to try to bring the community together rather than splitting it apart.
Great. All right. There goes the 3-minute timer. Good timing. All right, thank you, Kae, and I'm going to lower your hand, and I will move on. The next one in line is Eric Poulin. If you could unmute yourself and go for it.
Thank you, Chairman Litch. I appreciate your time. I will also speak with everyone tonight on behalf of the incredibly strong candidacy of these two appointees to the Community Relations Committee. However, I have a bias that members of the Appointments Committee are aware of, so I will not spend my time speaking to that. I'd like to speak, however, to the process of appointment to the Community Relations Committee. So just as a reminder, the CRC was developed out of a report from the Attorney General's office that found that responded to instances in the high school, but also found throughout our entire community, and I'll use the language of the report, that racism, homophobia, transphobia, and anti-immigrant sentiment does exist and runs deeply in our community, sad to say. The CRC was formed to combat this and to create a space for all members of our community to have a voice and for that voice to be shared safely. As this committee is independent of the mayor, candidates are forwarded, in her words, on a first-come, first-served basis without any vetting. It's a very unique process, different than any other city committee. This sounds completely fair. However, what's unfortunately happened is the vetting of candidates happens publicly, mostly via the almighty court of Facebook, and in a very ugly way that's spilled over into the real world. I think it's been completely unfair to everyone who has put their name forward to join this committee in recent days. I think it was unfair to a woman a month ago whose perspectives I greatly disagree with, but I think it was unfair to her to have to go through this whole process publicly. I think it's specifically unfair to the people of color who have reached out to join this committee to offer their insight and their experience and their vision. I think it was unfair to the man a couple of weeks ago who had to withdraw his candidacy for the CRC out of concern for the safety of his family. And I think it's unfair to the two women who we're speaking about tonight. Over the last several weeks, people of color who have put their names forward to be candidates for the CRC have experienced strangers showing up at their houses, screaming homophobic slurs at them, many occasions, both online and in real life, of them being told to go back to their country, fireworks specifically targeted at the houses of these people who are candidates. And most horrifying, these women have had to endure graphic threats, explicit threats of sexual violence, all because they have put their names forward to contribute to the Community Relations Committee, and all because of how this process is structured. People, this is not okay. This is not okay. The CRC, this committee, was formed to ensure the safety of all members of our committee. And the process of appointment to the CRC has actually been weaponized, and it's being used as a tool to threaten and harass these same people that it was intended to protect. This process has to change. It's not fair to these people in front of you today, and it's not fair to anyone who might be coming in future days. With that, I will concede my time. And again, I cannot recommend strongly enough the candidacies of Myra Oyedemi or Gabby Stevenson. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. The next one on the list here is Pasqualina. If you could unmute yourself and.
Yes, hi, thank you. My name is Pasqualina Azzarello. I live in Easthampton, Massachusetts. I'm here tonight to express my utmost support of Myra and Gabby joining the Community Relations Committee. I've been working with both of them for the last few months through AKINE, and I've known them to be incredibly dedicated people, very empathetic and very committed to this work. I also, like Eric had mentioned, I do want us to take a moment to reflect on why and how the Community Relations Committee came to be. I think its origins can never leave our view. I think that in sitting on several meetings of theirs in recent months, it was really clear that the origins of that committee was no longer part of its core. I don't know if it was ever part of its core. And as a resident, as a concerned resident who cares a lot about our city and being safe for every person here, for people of color, having Gabby and Myra on that committee, I know the origins of that committee coming from the racial violence that happened at our high school, that came from the years of looking the other way on the part of our city government and as on the part of school administrators. And for me, that is what I care a lot about, is that connection to what this is for and where this comes from, and the fact that this is very real. I'm also the city arts coordinator, and I'm doing a lot of work. I have done a lot of work in Easthampton High School. We're doing programming this fall that is going to be directly engaging youth of color as leaders and participants in our program. And I think about the youth of color in Easthampton. I think about families of color in Easthampton, and I think about the day-to-day realities of what it means and what it feels like and what it is to have an experience that is anything but welcoming and kind. And so I look forward to working with Gabby and Myra as members of the CRC. How much time do I have left?
About 30 seconds.
I also want to take this time to acknowledge I've been sitting on city council meetings, and I have heard many times it being referred to as we have members in our residents who are more on the left and residents who are more on the right, and we need people in our committees and our government to serve everybody, that's really important. But hatred does not belong anywhere. And I don't want to equate hatred with the right. And I've heard that referenced very nonchalantly by city council members during city council meetings. And I just want to ask the city councilors on this call to remember that hatred has no place here. Hatred doesn't have any place anywhere, and it has no place in our city, and city councilors need to remind people of that. I'm asking you all to please remind other councilors and other speakers during city council meetings that hatred and anything else don't belong together, that we do not tolerate hatred in the city of Easthampton.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the list was Lynne Wanamaker, if you can unmute yourself. And,
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm also here to support Myra and Gabby's nomination and to strongly encourage you to add them to the Community Relations Committee. I do not have the privilege of having worked with either of these women, but I have seen their presentations in public meetings and been incredibly impressed by the energy and enthusiasm that they bring to their community organizing efforts. I was incredibly excited when I saw their nomination, their willingness to serve on this body. And so while my neighbors can't, I can't speak with the same kind of detail that my neighbors spoke to because I have the privilege of knowing these two women. I wanted to talk about what I saw when I saw Community Relations Committee in action. Not only was I really struck by a lack of diversity in that group, but I was struck by a lack of focus, a lack of attention to the purpose and mission of the organization, and a lack of professionalism. So when I saw that these two organizers who have been doing so much in service of improving our community were willing to step up and take this public service role in a way that requires courage, requires dedication, energy, an incredible amount of courage, given the personal attacks that they're withstanding. I was just thrilled and impressed. And so I want to just say, as a neighbor and a member of Easthampton, a resident of Easthampton, I can't think of anything more wonderful to happen for the Community Relations Committee than for you to approve these two women who are willing to serve and to bring our community to where it needs to be in terms of the mission of that group: inclusion, welcome, safety. They've got all the skills and the willingness to serve, and we should be incredibly grateful. I also want to take this moment just to say, because I see that they're both present, I just want to say personally, as a neighbor, thank you for your willingness to serve Easthampton and to lead us in this way. I'm deeply, deeply grateful for your courage and your willingness. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Next one would be Carolyn, if you could unmute yourself and then.
Yes, I think here I am. Carolyn Cushing, and I too am here in support of Myra and Gabby's candidacy for many reasons already spoken to. One point I would make is that they are already doing the work that were outlined as the duties and responsibilities of the CRC when it was founded. You know, number one was advise and make recommendations to the mayor and city council on community issues related to health, safety, community involvement, and the fair and equal treatment of all persons, including but not limited to the report by the DOJ coming out of the high school incident. So they're already doing that work. And Gabby was involved in the initial facilitation of. So, and Myra, I have been in many meetings with Myra. She is wonderful in a meeting, both clear and talking about whatever her kind of point she's making, but she wants to hear from other people. And she can be very fun and just inviting and good to be in a group together. So, and the many other things that people have said. And now I have a request of city councilors, of the mayor, of, you know, leaders in the city, because they are being targeted with this violence for putting themselves forward, for coming forward to serve our community. I would really ask all the city councilors to speak strongly in support of their candidacy and to renounce the way they have been targeted, and to really show, kind of echoing some of the things Pasqualina said, like, hate has no place here. These kind of actions are not tolerated. And to hear the city councilors, our leaders, to say that out loud around this case and around future cases. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolyn. I appreciate that. Looking over. All right. It looks like Liz Perry. If you want to unmute yourself, and then you can go for it.
Hi, I'm Liz Perry. I live on Goss Street in Easthampton. I'm also just want to go on record in support of both these candidates. I have worked with them also through ACON. They are intelligent, they are hardworking, they're empathetic, they are funny. They would be a wonderful addition. Echoing everything that has been said before, I also want to echo what Eric Poulin had said and what Carolyn just touched on, the harassment that these members have been facing. These candidates have been facing, these past candidates have been facing, is just disgusting. And I encourage you to also speak out about that. I remember when Kathy was harassed and the police were called, the mayor spoke very strongly about that. In the meantime, these candidates have experienced harassment in their homes, in our community, and I don't feel like the attention from our city council and our mayor have been properly given to that, and it makes my heart hurt. And yeah, it has to stop. There's no place for that in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Next one with her hand up I see is Mindy Jenkins. If you could unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mindy Jenkins, and I live on Fleury Court in Easthampton. I'm also here in support of Gabby and Myra. I would like to echo the sentiments of all who spoke before me. They were very eloquent and articulate in their words, so I won't repeat it, but I agree wholeheartedly that we should be incredibly grateful that Gabby and Myra have stepped up to offer their voice to the CRC. I support their appointment wholeheartedly. They are both strong, intelligent, and dedicated women and would be an asset to the committee. And I also ask that the city council members boldly denounce the hate that they have faced since they've stepped up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. And I am not showing any other hands. We'll give it a second in case somebody's having any technical difficulties. Just one more call out. Oh, okay, we got a Megan. Your hand just went up, so if you'd like to speak, feel free.
Hi, thanks. I'm just also here to offer or give support for Gabby and Myra. I don't think I need to say anything that hasn't already been said, but I just wanted to be another voice to offer my support. I think it's incredibly important that there is a diversity of voices on the Community Relations Committee. I know I am new to the community. I forgot to say I'm Easthampton, Stanley Street. And when the murder of George Floyd happened, I was searching for somewhere to look to the city to find out what was going on. And I was pointed to the Community Relations Committee only to find that it didn't really seem organized enough to really react to this kind of issue and find out what was going on in our own community. So again, just a thank you to Gabby and Myra, and I echo everything that everybody else has said. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Megan. All right. One more opportunity for anybody else. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Refresher, if you don't know how to, click the participants at the bottom of the screen and then raise hand on the right. I'm not seeing any more. Councilor Gomez, you're not seeing anybody, correct? Oh, hang on, we got one now. Kat, if you could unmute your computer and then go for it.
Hey, sorry to be joining a little bit late. I'm Kat. I live in Precinct 1 in Easthampton, and I'm also here to speak in support of Myra and Gabby.
Last name, please.
Freeman, sorry. Thanks, Omar. Yeah, I just think the knowledge and experience that they would bring to the committee is desperately needed and would be wonderful in terms of supporting Easthampton and being a more inclusive and racially just town. So thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Kat. Appreciate it. All right. Anyone else? I'm not showing anybody. Councilor Gomez, do you see any hands raised on your end? No? Okay. So then I will close public speak and we will move on to the review of the appointments on our agenda tonight. The first one I would like to do is the reappointment on Rachel Phillips to the Cultural Council. So Rachel, I did not get in touch with her. I reached out. I did not hear from her, but I have seen her work as she's the sitting chair right now of the Cultural Council. She's done a great job. I actually attended the meeting where they honored the grants and split it up amongst multiple artists throughout the community. You know, she has a passion for the arts in our community, and she's said it in the past meetings that we've had as well. So Councilor Gomez, I'll turn it over to you for any conversation on it.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Kwasinski, do you have any conversation on Rachel?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Great. So then I would entertain a motion to approve the mayoral reappointment of Rachel Phillips to the Cultural Council with a term expiration of August 2nd, 2023.
I so move.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, Councilor Gomez?
Yes.
Councilor Kwasinski?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So motion passes 3-0 to recommend to full council. All right, next will be the review of Myra Oyedemi to the Community Relations Committee with a term expiration at 12/31/2022. At this point, Myra, if you are on still, take a look. If you want to unmute yourself, be more than happy. Oh, Councilor Kwasinski.
Before, I apologize.
Sure.
I heard some comments tonight that I wanted to address before we had anyone speak. I don't believe anyone should receive any negative criticism, anyone on their lawn or in their face. I am extremely disappointed to have heard about this. I was very distressed when I heard about this with regard to Kathy Gray or anyone else on our community who is willing to stand up and take an opportunity to have a position, to have a voice. And I wanted to respond because two of the folks I heard very clearly here tonight mention this subject. And I, for one, was always very upset any time of that occurs. We in this community have to find ways to hear other people with whom we don't agree. I encourage everyone to keep an open mind. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Kwasinski. And I appreciate those remarks as well. I think, you know, if we're taking the time right now, I will denounce hatred and any attacks on anybody. You know, we're one community that we need to stand together and we need to support each other as well. So I definitely appreciate that. And thank you. Myra, thank you for spending some time with us. I'd like to turn it over to you and just share with us, you know, some of the reasons why you want to join it and your vision and everything, you know, that you have to say.
Okay, firstly, thank you for the opportunity, and also thank you for those that have spoke out in support of my candidacy. A few things. I believe you've received my CV and my application, so many of them you've probably seen in front of you, but for brevity's sake, I came to learn about the Community Relations Committee after speaking with our mayor and also attending, and found that really the Community Relations Committee was calling for more members, calling for diversity, calling for a more focused purpose, and was reaching out to truly find itself in terms of its purpose, what its next steps were going to be. And that was my perception of what was transpiring, a group that was coming into its own, trying to find a purpose, trying to figure out how to interact and engage in these unprecedented times of COVID. Also, you know, during this period of spotlight on racial justice and racial injustice. So my interest in the committee is being that of one that can serve, one that can provide a unique perspective. As you can have seen in my CV, obviously, I'm a diasporic African. I have been an immigrant. I've been an undocumented immigrant. I've had a whole lot of life experiences in which a lot of people may not have. So I think I bring diversity not only for being a diasporic African, but also through my travels and living and working around the world. Through my profession, as other people have mentioned, I do have empathy, I have compassion, I also have the capability, and probably one of my biggest strengths is the ability to listen to others. Although many people have heard about me speaking, I'd like to offer that I also listen, and I listen analytically. I listen without prejudicial thoughts. I let my thoughts be formed through analysis, but also with the view of my unique perspective of the world. As you've heard other people mention, the history and the formation of the CRC, and really coming to speak about the areas of concern that were mentioned, I think my contribution to the CRC would be to continually analyze and continually take the temperature of the climate, the climate and the culture of the city of Easthampton, and knowing that's a dynamic process, and begin to prioritize and maybe even revisit what were the areas of concern that were found on June 20th, 2018, what needs to be prioritized in terms of action steps and missions. A number of them are still seem to be untouched upon, and some have been, there has been progress. So really thinking about having listening sessions, figuring out what priorities, what action steps and what areas of concern are priorities. Currently, how we can address those as a city, but also realizing that the CRC, I believe its biggest mission is to bring in the voices from the margins and have them be included in the conversation. Have it be a platform for dialogue that includes others' voices, and that includes the marginalized, that you particularly see in your city council meetings, rather in the audience of these faces and names. And really, and I just think that falls in line with my personal philosophy in life, looking for a world that is welcoming, a world that is hospitable, a world that is more in line with fairness, equality, and justice. And I see myself as just being one voice in a committee that can bring a different perspective, having had a whole lifetime of different perspectives.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass it over to Councilor Gomez for any questions he may have.
I prefer to give the opportunity to Councilor Kaczynski. I'm taking some notes as well. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Kwasinski, any questions?
I did have a few questions, and I congratulate you for coming forward and wanting to be part of Easthampton. You had mentioned that you have had significant empathy, and I think empathy is going to be an important asset for anyone on the committee. I see the committee as an opportunity to heal our community, an opportunity to grow. And I'm wondering, when people talk about empathy, oftentimes I think they're thinking about how they relate to others, how others relate to them, putting yourself in other people's shoes and understanding their experiences as best as any one of us can understand the experiences of another person, particularly if we have different backgrounds and we've been different places in our lives. One of the keys, I think, is going to be the ability to respond to people who have very different opinions than yourself. How can you talk to me and us about empathy with those who just are not of an opinion you might share, you might have? And how is there something in your experience that you say, oh, you know, there was this time I was here and it took some empathy to do? Is there something that you can tell us about empathy and divergent opinions?
Okay, let me process that. That was a multi-step question there. When I speak about empathy, or I'm speaking about being able, like you mentioned, to put myself in other people's shoes. And I was speaking to another counselor and saying one of the first action steps, as I see the role as a CRC, it's being a consultant. And that is, I provide consultative services in terms of my job as a therapist. So one of the first things is to develop a relationship before you start having prescriptive consultation, right? It's to develop that listening, developing a relationship beforehand. So in terms of having people's listening to or understanding people's divergent opinions, it's first to listen to them. It's not saying that you'll always meet eye to eye, as no person everyone has their own worldview that's formed from somewhere. So no one will actually have the same, sorry, it's loud on my screen. Motorcycles. Anyway. Sorry for that.
Different worldviews.
Yeah. So I mean, everyone can arrive to their own opinion based upon their own worldviews. It just happens that mine is broad. In terms of thinking about how can you work with someone who has a vastly different worldview, I can speak to my time of working in rural Limpopo, South Africa, and I'm from Western Massachusetts, and cultural systems, values, deep culture, and people's perspectives were vastly different from mine, being that I'm from Western Massachusetts and not particularly knowledgeable yet of a quasi-urban area in South Africa. But I could be quite effective because, one, I could take my time to learn about deep cultural structures, take my time to learn about language and how that, and also people's belief systems. So in terms of speaking about, I think I spoke about making an autism awareness campaign where people don't yet understand, hadn't yet really understood what autism is. How do I get a group of people who has a different worldview or a different idea on the ideology of autism to start including people with communication disorders, disabilities, autism, and actually create a functional support group and be able to give people of this, or educate enough to give people an opportunity to have agency, enough that by the time I had moved back to the US, the parents, the caregivers were able to facilitate their own support group and start running their own autism awareness days. And that being in mind, as one of my former professors would say, you never boo-boo anybody or boo-hoo someone else's thoughts and ideas because it's wrapped in their identity. Will your identities and your ideal systems be the same? No, because we're all formed out of our own worldviews, our own experience, our own culture. So I bring with you that of one of my experiences of working in a culture, in a language that was vastly different than mine, in being effective and being able to be a self-starter and really wrap my head of how can I make changes, how can I do something for a greater good that will be impactful, and how can I leave a footprint when I leave that has created agency for other people to have a voice. So in tying that into the CRC, how can I make agency for other people to have a voice? And that's something that I have done through my profession and that I'm willing to do in my capacity to serve on this committee.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Councilor Kuczynski. Thank you, Myra. Councilor Gomez, do you want to ask any questions at this point?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think I saw Councilor Derby on, so I'll give him an opportunity if he has any questions.
I'm just observing.
Okay. Thank you.
And we have Councilor President here too.
Oh, Madam President Conniff, if you have any questions you would like to ask?
I don't. No, I'm also observing. Thank you, Chairperson.
All right. So, Myra, part of the CRC for me is, and this one is a good question, and kind of just how do you see yourself collaborating with, you know, different elected officials, the public safety leaders, and the educational leaders, and how do you see that kind of impact as a one big collaborative, if that makes sense?
Well, that's something I'll have to wrap my head around. I'm still getting to learn all of the structures of city governance. But anyway, how would I see myself? Again, I would be a new member to an established group. So I would be in the process of building relationships, also figuring out the past accomplishments, achievements, and processes that this committee has already undertaken to see what structures are in place, and then perhaps try and fine tune or troubleshoot any barriers that there are to collaboration and coordination. Right now, I know it's a small group. It's, well, I think maybe 9 people, and there are certainly a lot of committees and a lot of commitment. So first would be to figure out what are the barriers, what avenues are currently being able to be used to interact. I did notice that there is a great need for the CRC presently to engage with establishing public dialogue in ways for ordinary residents to interact. So I'm not sure if that also trickles up or down to at the council level or city structures. But definitely through my work in the community, I have no problem in terms of lending my time to hear different viewpoints or what people's action steps would like to be, and then how the CRC could enact those action steps. So if that's speaking and having a liaison with city council or other structures, I believe that's what was currently proposed in one of the meetings that I watched, that there would be a different liaison to perhaps each department and or organizations in the community. So I believe that's the current structure, although I'm not currently aware. I can't tell you their future plans.
Great, thank you. So I guess that's it, unless there's any other counselors, officials, anybody? Final call? All right, with all that, thank you for your time, Myra, I appreciate it. And I will entertain a motion to approve Myra Oyedemi to the Community Relations Committee with a term expiration at 12/31/2022.
I move to appoint Myra Oyedemi to the Community Relations Council Committee with a term expiration. It was December 2022.
Correct. Yep.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second for approval. And any further discussion? No. Councilor Gomez?
Aye. Councilor
Kwasinski?
Aye.
And I am a yes. So the motion passes 3-0. Thank you. And just so you know, Myra, it's going to go against the full council tomorrow. And if you feel free to show up and you can speak in front of the full council during public speak time and kind of introduce yourself to the full council if you're available. Okay.
Thank you. I'll most definitely do that. I'll be running in between soccer practice.
Thank you, Myra.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to Gabriela Stevenson for the Community Relations Committee, term expiration 12/31/2022. Gabby, I know you are on. I thought I saw your name. Yep, there it is. If you would like to unmute yourself and share your interests, and we can go from there after that, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm Gabby Stevenson. I've lived in Easthampton for about 10 years. I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. Both my parents moved to the States from Mexico. And I grew up in an environment very different from Easthampton. So not only do I bring a perspective from growing up in a border city, I also taught, after college, I taught bilingual kindergarten for a year and bilingual third grade for 2 years. And after that, I decided to apply to a PhD program, and I ended up at UMass Amherst in the sociology department. While my time at UMass Amherst, I've had the opportunity to teach several courses, a lot of them around race relations, diversity. I was a part of a diversity and inclusion workshop at GCC. I was part of their diversity workforce at GCC when I taught there. And currently at my current job at the Donahue Institute as a senior research analyst, I work with a lot of community organizations that work to strive for racial equity through health disparities, through educational disparities, and through house and homelessness. So, and I really learned about the CRC 2 years ago when I was invited by the mayor to be a facilitator for the Easthampton Spirit Committee. And this was the day-long meeting, which was the precursor to the formation of the CRC, as you are aware. I met and I worked with a wide range of the population with varying opinions regarding next best steps for the community. This workshop resulted in a report that highlighted that, like the high school, Easthampton as a community also had serious issues with racism, ethnocentrism, and anti-immigrant sentiment, which creates and reinforces barriers to civic participation. The CRC was created as a means to break down those barriers and address the issues highlighted during the day-long workshop. The work that happened on this day was powerful and meaningful and set the groundwork for the important work that the CRC is charged with. While personal and professional commitments prevented me from volunteering to serve on the CRC in this original formation, I was still a strong believer in the mission of creating a board that would work to ensure that all members of the community would have a voice and a safe outlet to express it. The CRC should be committed to having sometimes challenging and difficult conversations with all members of the community, including those who may not have a traditional means to participate within city government. As I have a greater capacity to serve on the board now, I appreciate the opportunity to volunteer for this committee. As I mentioned, I have a background and I have experience in working with diverse groups with various varying opinions, and with teaching courses about diversity and inclusion. And even like Myra, my own personal life and experiences as a child of 2 immigrant parents, growing up in a Spanish-speaking household, having to learn English while at school, and being discriminated against because I didn't know English until kindergarten. I bring those experiences to the CRC, and that also gives me a different vantage point and a lens when confronting some of these issues that impact our city. So I'm excited to do this work, and I do appreciate your consideration for my candidacy. Thanks.
Thank you, Gabby. Appreciate that. I'm going to turn it over. Councilor Gomez, did you have any questions you would like?
Can you please let JP do it first? I'm sorry, I'm taking a bunch of notes, that's why.
Unacceptable, my friend. Councilor Kwasinski, any questions for Gabby?
Thank you so much for taking the opportunity to put yourself out there in the community, and forward to be able to work toward creating a better and safer community for everyone. As I asked before, I guess I'm really curious how individual candidates feel that their ability to have empathy, especially when it's related to someone who has very divergent opinions from oneself, and how you can help lead the community when dealing with people of very, very strong and different opinions, whether they be on the committee or in the community.
Sure. So I, as a research analyst and as an academic, I believe very strongly in evidence-based situations, and in looking through the evidence or looking at the situation as a whole with evidence and how it pertains to the community as a whole. So for me, it's not just about the individual, but it's how whatever issue the individual brings up, what that means for that community itself. So for me, it's having those discussions with the individuals, regardless of what I agree with or not agree with, and other members of the community. So for me, that's where it really happens. It's through dialogue. It's through open and honest dialogue, and not being afraid to have frank conversations, even if sometimes they're not comfortable. And I think it's everyone sometimes gets uncomfortable by very different types of conversations. And I think that's okay, because that's where growth happens. So for me, empathy is being able and willing to listen to all sides, being able to have conversations regardless of if I feel comfortable, or regardless if, I might feel uncomfortable because, I may realize that, oh, there's a bias I wasn't aware of, and it's being now presented to me as a bias. Like, that is something important that I think we all should grow from and should learn from. So I don't think it's just about, and it's like, I think for me, it's really emphasizing that it's not about just individuals. It's not about one person. It's not about just one specific situation, but it's about looking at the situation. It's looking about what the issue is as a whole and how it impacts Easthampton as a community. So that for me is the most important.
I hear you talking about maybe, I'm going to use the term systems, a whole, as opposed to individuals. It's interesting to apply empathy as a way of looking at a whole as opposed to individuals. Maybe you can help us.
Well, I think one of the problems is that we don't have an empathetic system. So if we look at the system as a whole and try to make changes within that system, we can have an empathetic system. So I don't think empathy is it's not an individual trait. And it's something that I think we should strive for as a community, is to have an empathetic government, is to have empathetic policies. So for me, that's what I think is important. And from the mission statement of the CRC, that's what they're trying to do, is build a welcoming whole community space. And with that, you need the systems in place to support a welcoming, safe, empathetic community.
Thank you. I'm reserving some thought time, so please feel free to continue, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Kwasinski. Pass it over to you, Councilor Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to say thanks to all the residents who applied for any committee. I think it's important for the community to apply for our committees, and I'm so happy that people really want to serve in any capacity in our community when people are doing this for free. So I think doing this for our community is amazing. First, I want to start with that, saying thank you. I'm going to talk about the full city council because when we received the emails, all the city councils, the majority of the city council received emails about you. Most of them, I have to be honest with you, was in favor of it. But we received a few that are against it, and I just want to address those emails that we received against you. I want to give you the opportunity to tell us why we should say yes to your appointment after listening your answers to those questions. The first one is when we say no to two previous appointments from the mayor, we receive substantial evidence from what they said in a few social platforms. One of them is Facebook. And we do receive a few things about yourself too. One of them was saying in one situation that I don't know because I just saw part of the screenshot. I didn't see exactly what happened. Is that you said that you used the F word to our community. People can feel uncomfortable and to go now to the CRC because they can feel like you don't are letting anyone being welcome to the CRC because that can expression in at the social platform. That's one of them. The other one is that I saw it today. It sounds like for any reason you have a huge fight with one of our counselor, and that fight in a few emails show like fight like arguments. I'm not talking about like saying anything inappropriate. I just want to say that there were arguments between you and him, and they came in a few screenshots from a few emails that we received. And to the point of view of the people who send us the email, sound like you don't have the ability to have an open communication with anyone, especially with someone who disagree with you, because you have your point of view and you're going to change it because that's your point of view, and you're not willing to listen to anyone. I just want you to address those concerns that we have about those.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I think there were two separate issues, right? So I'm going to address the first one first, and then the second one second. So the first one was, so this is when I talk about context and talk about looking at the picture as a whole, this is, I think, a really good example of why I think that's important. So I'm assuming you're referring to a moment in time, like 2.5 years ago. It was when Beto was running for Texas Senate. He's from El Paso. So as a fellow El Pasoan, I was super excited. And also he was running against Ted Cruz, which is just exciting. I kept buying signs and they kept getting stolen. And it just kept happening. And it was around the same time that the welcoming signs that were also getting stolen, we're like a good neighbor signs were also getting stolen. So it was this point in time in Easthampton where there was like rampant sign stealing of what tended to be mostly like left-leaning signs. So in a moment of frustration, I just said, F off, Easthampton. So if we're going to like talk about semantics of words, I think it's also important to talk about that F off has a very different connotation than F you and F Easthampton. When I say F off, it's a sign of exasperation and just like disappointment and annoyance that my property kept getting stolen from my lawn. And I think these moments of expression are fine, because if we look at the rest of the thread, I don't respond to anyone that was telling me that I was like, out of line. And also there were people in that thread that were very supportive of what I said. And so I think that's when we talk about, being empathetic and being able to have these hard conversations or having conversations. This is a perfect incident where I was frustrated. My sign was getting stolen and kept getting stolen. I was like on sign number 3 or 4 when I posted this. And I was just frustrated that in my community, my property kept getting stolen just because someone didn't like my Beto sign. And it was a sign that didn't even have to do anything with Massachusetts politics, to be frank. And so I think that's a good example as to why context is important. So it was not me saying like, F you, I hate Easthampton. And I think the fact that I have continued to participate in Easthampton government, I participate in Easthampton fundraisers. I support a lot of Easthampton organizations. I've had weekly meetings with the mayor and the chief of police. Through a kind, I'm going to be a part of the mayor's workforce working group. So I have shown my commitment to Easthampton, and me showing frustration at Easthampton is not a bad thing. It's a moment of time where we can have the conversations. And so I think that's a good example of how context is important. And again, as been stated earlier in this meeting, 2 meetings ago, the city council got angry and was frustrated and yelled at people who were participating in the city council or in the appointments committee and then the subsequent city council committee. And even in subsequent meetings, the mayor herself admitted that tempers were lost. So this outburst of public tempers does happen. And I think I shouldn't be judged because of one comment I made 2 years ago in a moment of frustration because my property was being stolen. Now the second topic was my fight. So this was an incident that happened a year ago, and I'm not really sure how this interpreted as a fight, but Councillor Zarrett presented a thin blue line present to the Easthampton Police Department. I pointed out that the thin blue line is a symbol of white supremacy, and it made me question his judgment. 3 days later, Councilperson Zarrett conceded it was a misjudgment to gift the city that flag. And because there are people who feel very adamant, and as we all know, the thin blue line is divisive, this got turned into a Turtle Boy article. And from that Turtle Boy article, myself and other women were harassed. I received rape threats. And when Councilperson Zarrett was made aware of the situation and was asked to say something to maybe help de-escalate the situation, his response was, "I am sorry she feels that way." So for me, it's not having a fight with Councilman Zarrett. It was me saying, okay, so this is now I know where I stand, and for my own personal safety, I'm going to take a step away. When Councilperson Zarrett asked to speak with me in a private conversation, I did inform him that I do not feel safe and comfortable because of my past experience with him. But I did invite him and encouraged him to attend this meeting because I do want to answer his questions and I do want to have those conversations with him. So I do find it unfortunate that he was not and is not part of this meeting to have it and address these conversations, because I'm more than happy to have them. So I'm not really sure what else you wanted to know about that, Omar, but.
I'm good. I just, it's the concern that I have was basically asking how you're willing to listen everybody in our city when from those emails that we received look like you wasn't able to listen a counselor. That's why I just want to know.
Oh yeah, no, I'm more than happy to conversations with Owen. I just wanted to control the space. I just want to have those conversations in a space where I felt safe for my own personal safety and for my own personal comfort. And I think that's fair.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the questions, Omar. I appreciate it. And thank you as well, JP.
Thank you, Omar. Going to check in with Councillor Derby real quick if he has any questions. And I guess that's a no still.
Sorry, I wanted to get a glass of water, but no, I'm good.
Okay, all right. And Councillor Coniff, give you an opportunity as well.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Gabby, I just had the one, and I'll ask you the same one. And I know I asked Myra earlier on it, was being part of that Community Relations Committee. I think part of it is collaborating with the elected officials, public safety, the chief police, fire chief, and things like that. And then even the educators in the community, if we end up going back to school, the principals and the superintendent, et cetera. I think, how do you envision that? And how would you really collaborate with some of those officials?
So, let me think. Okay, so I think first, I would like to know more about how the CRC functions itself. I've attended a few meetings already just as a citizen and or as a resident of Easthampton, and I'm not so quite sure exactly how their processes work and how they, like, for example, respond to concerns or emails. So I think the first thing, if I was part of the CRC, is I would really want to know how they function so I can learn how they're working, and then from there be able to, really put forth how my strengths of, really digging deep into the data and really focusing on building this wider, this wider net of making sure that we're focused on the community as a whole and what the community needs in order to progress. And in terms of how I see myself I'm sorry, do you say participating with or working with?
Yeah, collaborating, yeah.
Oh yeah, so when, I think, for example, the fact that I have been in several, meetings with the mayor of Easthampton and the chief of police and other police officers of Easthampton, I have shown that I am willing to work and have worked in these working group meetings with already several entities of Easthampton government. In terms of schooling, I think I would just have to draw from my own experience first as an elementary school teacher, where I did, when I taught kindergarten and third grade, it was, I taught in a school where I was like the one bilingual teacher and all the other grades were all English. So my kids, did experience, racism and bullying within by other students because their English wasn't as good as their peers, and we were always a different class and all of these things. So I think I would bring that vantage point of having to, handle the, how fragile and handle the emotions of, these children that were put in this situation. And I think I would bring forth that sort of lens into anything that had to do with school, especially with the knowledge knowing that there has been racial tension within the high school, as we're aware of, and I'm sure that trickles down to the middle school and elementary school because it doesn't just start in high school, unfortunately. So I think that would be a great strength, personally, in terms of if and when the CRC does work with the schooling system, and if and when, hopefully, school does reopen for the parents. So I think for personally, like my background, my education, and my work, I think that's where my strengths are, and I can draw from that. But I also want to be respectful of where the CRC is and how they currently handle any sort of, I'm not sure, issues or any sort of topics that they want to work with, and also be respectful of how things are being done there and just see how I can fit myself into the current CRC. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And then I just had one last call out, and it was just around some of the emails that Omar mentioned that we received. And thank you for your time yesterday, or this morning actually,
oh yeah,
reviewing some of the concerns from the community. So in the past, and I know we've touched on it or whatever, we voted no on some of the candidates because we had concerns from residents. And if you look at the mission statement, it's we're building a community with inclusion, community pride, community members feel welcome and accepted. And some of the emails had concerns from residents that we would go against those traits that we're looking for in a person on the committee. So I guess I'd really like to just kind of see how you could kind of, tell me, show me how can we overcome that, because we have these concerns from residents. I know you, but I need to kind of sell it, I guess, on the to the public and everything, because some of them are concerning,
I guess for me it's difficult. So you want me to address concerns, but
yeah, I mean, just the fact that I guess the community there was concerns in the community that would make people feel that they wouldn't be welcome or they wouldn't be accepted, and we want to make sure that all the members on the committee themselves would welcome and accept all these individuals, and I think that, I just looking at how we can, make sure that if we do approve the appointment, that it's the right thing for the community in that sense.
Sure. I mean, I think it goes back to, it's okay to have different opinions. And I would implore that when you're reading, I guess, these comments that I'm not really sure what they are, you make sure that it's not just based on the fact that they don't either, I guess, like me as a person or like my views. And I think it's unfair to ask people who serve on any sort of committee or who volunteer for any committee for them to not have already a pre-established vantage point or viewpoint about the world, because we all do. We already have our stances. And I think I've shown that I'm still more than willing to have to work and to show up and to continue working. My work with Akine, I think, speaks really greatly my commitment to making a safe space for community and for people within Easthampton that feel marginalized. I think the fact that I continue to, have meetings with Mayor Nicole, and that I've also met with several city council members apart from this appointment process, but just to discuss issues. Like, for example, I've had meetings with Omar, I've had meetings with Lindsay, I've had meetings with Peg, I've had meetings with Tom Peake. So I have reached out, and I do feel like I have shown this willingness that I do want to have these discussions with my city council members. I do want to have discussions with the mayor of Easthampton, and I do want to participate. Are people always going to agree with what I say? No, and I don't expect them to. Just like I'm sure you don't expect people to always agree with what you say. And are sometimes conversations going to get difficult and maybe emotional? Yes. But I think, like I said, that's important. It is super important for us not to be afraid to have these difficult conversations, to talk with people who have differing viewpoints. I honestly do welcome that for people to have differing viewpoints as me, to have these discussions with me. I think I told you, Bill, earlier this morning that if I wanted to talk to someone who just had the same thoughts as me, I would just talk in the mirror of myself. That doesn't get me anywhere. I also want to grow as a person. I also understand that I am not perfect. I'm sure I have biases. I'm sure I also have spaces where I need to grow. And the only way that I'm going to grow is if I talk to individuals who see the world differently than me. So I think that's an important attribute, an important quality, and something that frankly is needed in a committee like the CRC, someone who's willing to engage no matter who. And I think I've shown that I am.
Great.
Thanks.
Councilor Gomez or Kwasinski, anything? Councilor Gomez?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a comment, and it's about the appointment process. And I just want to say thanks to Gabby and Myra for being here, because we didn't have the same opportunities with most of the members from the CRC right now. Some of them we interview by phone or by email, but we didn't have the opportunity to interview face-to-face, even when we had the meetings at 50 pace. And I think having this discussion is great, especially for the committee that we are seeing these appointments. I think is amazing, and I hope the next candidates that applied for the CRC shows to our meetings, because I think what we're doing with Myra and Gabby is amazing, and I hope they didn't stop there just because they're people of color. I just expect that we do the same process with everybody who applied for the CRC. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Gomez. Councilor Kwasinski, I see your hand.
As you know, I've spoken out at other appointments about certain types of language that is used in a public forum on social media, and I am not a fan of language which often is interpreted as offensive, whether it's meant offensively or not. But to some people, that language is offensive. So when you talk about postings about harsh, in very harsh words, I don't even want to say the words because I don't think they're appropriate for public meetings, but the language that was used, I'm offended, and I don't appreciate that. I do appreciate your explanation, and I can see on another committee where you would be quite appropriate in serving the community. But putting down Easthampton in that sort of way, or that it could be interpreted in that sort of way, raises some great pause in my mind. But also important is the fact that in discussions with another counselor, I think it's going to be important that you be able to speak with all members of the community, including counselors, officials of the city. And I was very disturbed to hear that you felt you couldn't or didn't return his call. And so I understand and respect your saying that you felt uncomfortable speaking and wanted to speak in certain terms with the person, perhaps even in a public forum. I'm not sure. That's what it sounded like. So I feel uncomfortable moving forward with a vote and probably will withhold my vote tonight based on your continuing to return that call or to either speak in person or do so at a public forum. I'm also very disappointed that that counselor isn't here tonight, but we all can't be at every meeting. So I can certainly appreciate that. I'm speaking about Counselor Owen Zarrett and having a difference of opinion, a statement about an opinion, and then not being able to. I see returning calls as best as possible with my constituents as being an important thing, as with the people in the community, so that we can exchange ideas. Maybe you can help me understand your position better. I certainly would love to hear it. And if not, maybe you are looking for a different forum to discuss this with Counselor Zarrett.
Can I quickly respond? Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think I wanted to be perfectly clear that I did say I'd be willing, I did respond to Owen, and I included screenshots. I included Peg and Bill in my email to assure that other counselors were also aware of the situation. And in my response, I did say that I was more than willing and more than happy to have a conversation with Owen. I just didn't want it to happen in a private way because I didn't fear for my safety. So I think it's unfair to misconstrue this as me not wanting to have a conversation with him or not wanting to discuss anything with him. I think it's fair for me to want to protect myself. I think it's fair for me to want to feel safe when having a conversation. And I think it's unfair to put all blame on me and not place any sort of responsibility or accountability on Owen as a city councilor for creating that type of environment for a constituent of this city. And like I said, I did invite Owen to please participate in this meeting because I do want to have a conversation with him. He did not respond to my email, so I don't know where he stands. And that was unfortunate that like you said, it is unfortunate that he did not come to this meeting. And it's also unfortunate that he did not respond to me. So thank you. I really do appreciate you taking the time and the consideration. I really do.
Thank you, Gabby. And
thank you.
So everybody's aware, Counselor Zarrett texted me before the meeting and he had something come up where he could not attend, but he did bring that forward earlier. Did I hear somebody else talking? No? Maybe it's just my echo. Anybody else? Anybody have anything to say? Okay, I don't see anybody moving. So at this point, thank you, Gabby, for your time, and I appreciate it. Counselor Gomez and Counselor Kwasinski, do you want to put this to a vote, or did you want to move it forward? What's your opinion on what you were just addressing, Counselor Kwasinski? I think we should vote for it. And
what do we have for timelines here?
On the 45 days? 8/14 was when it was stamped. So we've been 30 days, so we got about 2 weeks.
Time for the Oh, the first meeting, 2 weeks. What is the date? In 2 weeks, September 29, 30. That puts us over into the October meeting, doesn't it?
October 7.
Yeah, October 7.
I leave it to the chair's discretion.
Okay, then I think we should vote on it tonight, and either recommend or not recommend to the council at tomorrow's meeting. So I will entertain a motion to approve. Gabriela Stevenson to the Community Relations Committee with a term expiration 12/31/2022.
So move.
Councilor Kwasinski, do I have a second or no?
I have no second at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then I will second the motion. And there's a motion and a second on the floor to approve Gabriela Stevenson to the Community Relations Committee. Councilor Gomez?
Aye.
Councilor Kwasinski?
Abstain.
And I am a no at this point, so it's a 1-1-1. And we will go through at the full council meeting tomorrow. Gabby, if you would like to speak, just like I said to Myra, I don't know if you heard it, it'll be right in the public speak time at the beginning of the meeting, where you can address the full council and have open conversations there. Okay. Thank you. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to adjourn. And all in favor, Councilor Gomez?
Aye.
Councilor Kwasinski?
Aye.
And I'm a yes. So meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. And we'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Good evening.